Bem-vindos ao segundo take. O meu nome é António Araújo e neste episódio converso com Jonathan Cuartas, realizador do excelente filme de Vampiros, O Meu Coração Não Bate Sem, agora disponível na recém-lançada plataforma de streaming dedicada às emoções fortes, FilmTwist. Relembro que o podcast está agora também disponível para ver, além de ouvir. Para tal, basta irem até ao canal de YouTube do segundo take e, se gostarem, podem subscrever para não perderem pitada.
My heart can't beat, baby, unless you tell them to. My heart can't see, baby, unless you tell them to. There are things I should do, but I know it's just no use, 'cause I'm controlled by your love.
Em setembro de 2020, o Motel X foi um dos primeiros festivais a exibir My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To, a estreia na realização de Jonathan Cuartas, cuja estreia em Tribeca, uns meses antes, tinha sido cancelada por causa do Covid-19. Pouco mais de um ano e meio depois, o filme ficou finalmente disponível para o público português com o lançamento da nova plataforma de streaming FilmTwist. Aproveitei a oportunidade para falar com o realizador e a dar-vos a conhecer este discreto, mas excelente filme de baixo orçamento que se apresenta como uma variação de espírito indie do mito do vampiro. Nele, conta-se a história dos irmãos Dwight, encarnado por Patrick Fugit, uma cara conhecida para os fãs de Quase Famosos de Cameron Crowe, e Jessie, encarnada por Ingrid Sophie Schramm, que teve uma participação fugaz em Linha Fantasma de Paul Thomas Anderson, que tem ao seu cuidado o enfermo irmão mais novo Thomas, interpretado por Owen Campbell. Esta tarefa envolve a atividade noturna de raptar e assassinar indigentes para fornecer a Thomas o sangue que este precisa para a sua tenue sobrevivência. Apesar da determinação férrea de Jessie, o empático Dwight começa a vacilar perante a perspectiva de continuar a matar, sonhando em fugir e mudar de vida. Filmado em apenas 20 dias e fotografado num opressivo formato de 4x3, O Meu Coração Não Bate Sem Ti, como estreou por cá, abraça sem pudor a sua origem independente e desenvolve a narrativa de forma seca e direta, focando-se nas ações das personagens e confiando no espectador para ir preenchendo as lacunas. Este foco permite que a minimalista história se vá formando como um meticuloso puzzle assente no desenvolvimento das personagens, sem juízos de valor ou moralidades. Este é um conto sobre personagens aprisionadas. Thomas, em permanente estado de debilidade, está confinado à casa e à escuridão protetora da noite, ansiando por travar novas amizades que o libertem das interações familiares, as únicas que lhe são permitidas. Dwight e Jessie, por seu lado, são prisioneiros da obrigação fraternal de cuidar do irmão mais novo, ou seja, da sua ligação de sangue. Os três funcionam, na verdade, como uma família disfuncional. Mas pergunto eu, haverá outro tipo de famílias? Jessie encarna o papel de implacável matriarca, quando Dwight entrega às fantasias escapistas a que a mãe não se pode dar ao luxo de permitir. Apesar de enraizado na mitologia e na tradição do filme de terror, e de proporcionar situações de verdadeiro desconforto pontuadas pela amoralidade e sujidade inerente às sangrentas ações, este filme funciona como um intenso drama sobre desintegração familiar, sacrifício e aceitação da morte, recompensando quem não se tenha deixado alienar pela abordagem crua e desapaixonada de Jonathan Cuartas. Deixo-vos agora com a minha conversa com Jonathan Cuartas, na qual o realizador nos fala desta sua primeira experiência na realização de uma longa-metragem, nos revela as suas inspirações temáticas e dá-nos um vislumbre do seu próximo projeto.
You know, I was thinking maybe we could all go out sometime.
Where would we go?
Anywhere.
There's no one out at this time.
Not here.
Not anywhere.
No, that's not true.
Listen, that's not happening. Do you have any idea what we do to get that blood?
thought you said this was a shelter.
It is.
Looks like a house.
I don't think that I can keep doing this.
He's our brother.
He's sick. We shouldn't be doing the things that we're doing.
We can't do it without you. It has to be the three of us together.
Would you get me some blood?
So, again, thank you for agreeing to speak with me.
Of course.
And we can finally watch your movie in Portugal.
Yeah.
I saw your movie, My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To, in 2020 in a festival, Motel X, on September.
Yeah, it was one of the first festivals that we played at, I remember.
Yeah, is it true that you were going to open in Tribeca and that it was cancelled?
Yeah, it was postponed. We still played for certain people, but it wasn't much for the audiences. It was more for like the critics and the jury. But we didn't play for the actual audience, and then we ended up playing in 2021. But yeah, it was postponed in 2020.
Yeah, that must have been a bummer. So because it was the premiere, right?
Yeah, it was world premiere. It was sad, but it was bittersweet because we were still thankful that we got in, and then it kind of led to us getting into many festivals around the world, including Motel X and Shanghai and Sitges and all over Europe and some parts in South America. So it was a good festival run overall, even if we couldn't be there in person.
Yes, and actually, the movie won some prizes along the way, right?
Yeah, we won a few prizes. We won 2 prizes at Sitges, and my brother got a special mention for cinematography at Tribeca, and we won in Cleveland, and there was a few others that we won from as well.
Okay, we'll circle back to your movie, but for people that don't know you, can you talk about who are you and how did you get your passion for movies and how did you end up directing?
Yeah, so my name is Jonathan, and I'm from Miami, Florida. I was born to 2 Colombian immigrant parents. My parents both came from Colombia in the 80s, and so there was very much an upbringing around family. It was a Latino household with two other brothers, and we were all very connected. And the way that we would bond was by going to the movie theater and watching movies. I didn't actually have any family that was in the film industry. It was just more of a passion for storytelling. So that's where this idea of making movies came from. It started from me just drawing comics, and then when I was in high school, I started creative writing. So it was less about what format I was doing. It was more about the fact that I was just wanting to tell stories. And then in college, it translated into filmmaking, and that's when I learned about the camera and the editing and all of that technical stuff. But I think I had a passion for stories since I was a kid.
Yeah. Are your brothers Michael and Rodrigo?
Michael is my brother. Rodrigo is my dad, actually. So he was the production designer on the film. But yeah, he's my dad.
Okay, and you have credited some collaborations with other filmmakers in short movies, and you write, you direct, and you also edit. So, are you now transitioning to wanting to direct features, and or are you continuing to develop these skills?
So yeah, so this was my first feature as a writer and a director, and that's essentially where I want to focus my attention on. I'm trying to get another one made as a director, but I actually edited a feature after I made this movie. I just like being on set. I like working with my friends and working with people who I feel have skill and have talent, and they're nice people. And it's a way for me to grow and sort of harvest my own skill and my own technical aptitude on set. Like being around these people helps me get better, I believe. And just being in the environment of movie making it inspires me to also write my own scripts. So that's what kind of fosters that environment.
Okay. And do you find that genre is something that helps you to make movies and it's a way in, or is it a passion?
It's a little bit of both. When I was a little kid, I used to be really scared of horror movies, and I think now it's a point of curiosity. Right now that I'm older, I'm starting to watch all these classic horror movies that I didn't watch when I was younger, and at the same time, it is a way in because I just gravitate towards the horror genre to talk about personal aspects of my life and talk about the stories of my family and the stories of my heritage, which I want to focus on more. But I just like using genre as a vehicle to talk about these things. And how do we use like archetypes? Like in the case of this movie, we're using vampires to talk about codependence. And I find that to be very interesting when it comes to horror.
Yes, because one thing that if I have to describe your movie to someone, I will start by saying that it's a vampire movie, but not really, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
vampirism is like just a way to set up a story that where blood is like more than a metaphor than the
yeah.
focus of the narrative, right?
Yeah, and it's a way to we everyone knows the rules of a vampire. Like vampires need blood and they can't go into sunlight. That's generally the rules of a vampire. So by doing that, I don't have to explain the rules. I have to more build the dynamics of the family. And so it's more about building the world and the rituals of this family and all these traditions that they have instead of for me spending time on building this mythology that already exists.
Yes, and was the song from Alan Smith the starting point, or did it came later? Because it
That
gives the movie its title, right?
right. Yeah, it came well it's interesting because in the script it always said 60s soul song, so that was always a part of the script. But I didn't know that it was specifically I Am Controlled by Your Love by Helene Smith. That came later from our producer who had always wanted to use that song in a movie, and he just thought that it would work well here with sort of this bittersweet melancholic tone that we were conveying or portraying. And so we ended up using that song. And when we were reading the lyrics, we were like, wow, this has a lot to do with the thematic point of the movie. And so we ended up choosing that little bit of the lyrics for the title of the movie. It's just for me, it's hard to come up with titles, and so we were borrowing from another source that was a point of inspiration for the movie itself.
Yeah, but it's an unforgettable title. I'm sure it can be confused with anything else that's out there because it has a personality that it will stand out. I'm sure.
Yeah, like if we called it Blood or like Thirst, there'd be like 10 other
30
movies,
30 movies. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And you could almost say that the movie is a chamber piece with just
mm,
three characters or focusing on three characters. Of course, it has other
yeah,
characters, and we leave the house, but it was paramount to find three great actors for these parts. How
yeah.
how did you end up with Patrick Fugit, Ingrid Sophie Schramm, and Owen Campbell?
Yeah, so Patrick Fugit was we shot in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm from Miami. So for us, we kind of moved over to Utah because our producer's from there originally, and his childhood friend is Patrick Fugit, and so
Okay.
his name's Kenny.
It
He
helps.
sent the script. Yeah, so he sent the script to Patrick, and he didn't tell Patrick what it was about. And so when Patrick started reading, he's like, okay, he picked up a guy on the street, and then he's like, oh, he knocked him out with a bat. And then, oh, now his sister's cutting his throat open. So it started to get very intense. And I think that Patrick was responding to the way that this film leaned into horror, but also subverted some expectations of a horror movie. And so he was
Yes.
happy to jump on board, and it was great to have him. And then Owen Campbell, I had seen him in this other movie called Super Dark Times that I really loved. And he was just my top choice. And we went through his agent, and thankfully, Owen was open to the idea of joining us. And then Ingrid was just a blessing because we had another actress who was supposed to play Jessie, and she had to drop out like 2 weeks before we were shooting. And we were all freaking out trying to find another actress. And then the way that it worked out with Ingrid is just perfect because now I can't see anyone else in that role. And I think she even
Yes.
looks like Owen Campbell. And it's like, it's funny that it works out that way because it was like a blessing in disguise. So we're just happy with them and the whole cast, really.
Yes. Funnily enough, I also had seen Super Dark Times, and
Mhm.
I didn't recognize Owen immediately. I believe because of the hair,
Yeah,
but then I made the connection.
yeah,
But you're right, Ingrid. Uh, she's not exactly the protagonist of the movie because I think that's
mm,
Dwight, but she's central to the dynamics of the three brothers, right? So I think you
yeah,
were very lucky with her.
yeah.
Um,
Super lucky.
and your choice for framing it in the academy ratio, was it an artistic option so that these characters seem enclosed and claustrophobic?
Yeah, it was a conversation I had with my brother, and at first we were gonna go a little bit more open, like 1:6:6, but then we shot a music video in the Academy ratio, and we really liked how it framed characters' faces, and it was a tall frame as well. And so we did want to enclose the characters in their house, but at the same time, when they were outside, we also wanted to give them a lot of headroom and kind of make them feel isolated, like they were alone. So it was kind of like juxtaposing those two elements.
Yeah, I think it works perfectly. And so in essence, you use the vampire tropes to make a movie about a family, but well, I
Mhm.
believe all families are dysfunctional in one way or another. But what I like here is
Yeah,
that you don't give much context. You develop the narrative based on the actions of the characters, and we have to work out what's going on between them. And um,
yeah,
this you already said that this is a story about codependency, and
hmm,
the thing is that Jesse Jesse seems to be like the matriarchal force of the three, and she cares and she shows love for her brothers, but at the same time there can be a wrong kind of love, maybe.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's very intense kind of love. And for me, on a surface level, obviously they're committing these atrocities and they're killing people, but also marginalized people. You know, they're going after homeless people, immigrants, sex workers. And so all these things that they're doing, they're definitely atrocities. But when I
Yes.
see it on a metaphorical level, I see it like these are the sacrifices that families make for one another. In a way, they're cutting off relationships with the outside world to focus on the family member with a sickness.
Yes.
And the family member who's sick is also being cut off because they are being looked after by their family, and maybe their family is strict, or they're very firm and set on their rules like Jesse is, and it kind of adds to this tension that is overcoming the household. And so for me, it was like every other character is more monstrous than the vampire itself. You know,
Yeah.
the sister and brother are more like monsters than the actual vampire.
And it's tragic because we see in Dwight some regret about what he has to do,
Yeah.
and some hope of fleeing. And I believe that you are very brave in addressing something that usually isn't addressed in movies, because usually we see the caregiver as an hero and a saint that
Yeah.
forgets everything to focus on the care that he has to give. But here we have Dwight that we feel the weight of him having to care for his brother when he wants to get rid of the shackles and go away and live his life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, it's also, yeah, because he also wants relationships, he wants friendships, he wants his own experiences, and I think they're all socially repressed individuals. And what you're saying about someone being ultimately dedicated and extremely dedicated, that's essentially who Jessie is, but she's seen in a different light here because of the fact that here, what the sacrifice and what the dedication means is essentially killing people.
Yeah.
And so it is that metaphor of like, how far do we go? When do you accept the death of a loved one? And you know, it's not always the answer to let someone go, but at some point, people who are sick are not going to get any better. And for me, it was talking about my grandmother who was in hospice, and it's not really the same in the movie because it's a young kid, but in real life, my grandmother was she was like 80, and she was going to pass away, and it was affecting the emotional state of my huge family. I have a lot of uncles and aunts, and so there's a lot of tension, but at the same time there's still like the bond. Everyone ultimately has love for one another because we all share the same family.
Yes, and that's where the blood enters as a metaphor, because it has a double meaning, because it's the thick blood of family, and also the blood that
Yeah.
sustains, in this case, the vampire part of the story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think again that just goes back to the title, My Heart Can't Beat, because it's like it's not just Thomas's heart can't beat if he doesn't get blood. It's almost like they all depend on one another for life. Like they're all just codependent
Yes.
on each other. So it's almost like all their hearts can't beat, you know?
Yes, yes. And did I detect some kind of social critic, especially in the way that immigrants are treated in the U.S. with the character that's picked up by Dwight?
Yeah. Yeah. So this was like kind of, this is somewhere where I want to explore more with my next work. But I think in the fact that my parents are immigrants, I wanted to touch on this subject, even if it was like another little plot. And so it was essentially the idea of the American dream and the way that that has deteriorated for this particular immigrant who came, and he was expecting this thing that has been sold to him and this idea that he's going to thrive and he's going to make it. And that's not the case for a lot of immigrants who come here, and they're treated poorly and they're stereotyped, and there's a lot of xenophobia and racism towards immigrants. And so this was a way of showing it again in an extreme way, but it was talking about how, even this family, this poor white family, they're going after the people that society deems are not as worthy. They're going after
Yeah.
an immigrant because they're at the margins of society, and they're saying, okay, maybe no one will care because they're
Yes.
considered less by some people in America, as well as like sex workers. They're like, oh, no one's gonna care about a prostitute, they would say. But and it's tragic. So yeah, there's hints of that. I don't really talk about it too much on the nose, but there's definitely those victims were written in purposefully. Not because I'm saying that they should be the ones that are killed, but society deems them to have less value.
Yes. Well, and worst of all, under the guise of helping them, right? So, which
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the lot of cases of immigrants where they are promised something, only to be
Yeah.
then tricked into something bad, right?
Yeah. I mean, even there was cases in Florida where they were even used for slave labor. Like they don't get paid. It's almost like they're being used for their labor and they're not being compensated. And it's inhumane, and it's dehumanizing. And I think that's that's the truth. A lot of the cases, it works out for some immigrants. Like my parents were able to find a way, but it was also very challenging for them to do that. You kind of start from scratch when you go to a new country, but a lot of the times it ends up tragically.
Yeah. Just two more questions about the movie. I won't take much of your time. One is about
Cool.
the ending. Do you
Mhm.
find the ending as an well, I'm hesitating to say it, but like an happy ending for Dwight?
Yeah, it's funny because maybe I'm very grim, or I'm very morbid, because I think that I agree it's like a happy ending. It's almost like well, I could say at least it's a bittersweet ending, because he is finally free from the shackles and the imprisonment of having to live through this cycle of violence. And, it's like a cyclical nightmare that he's escaping. But at the same time, he's standing there, right? And he has what he wants, or what he think he wants. And then he turns around and he realizes that there's no one
Yeah.
to share it with. He doesn't have any family
Yes.
to share it with. The siblings that he still loved his siblings, and he cannot share this experience with them. And the people that he wanted to make friends with or be in a relationship with, they're also relationships that have been broken. And so, not to mention the burden, in the surface level of the story, the burden of all the murders he's committed, he's probably going to have to
Yes.
hide
The
out somewhere.
regrets, right?
But
Yeah.
in a metaphorical sense, there was a point in the ending where he got killed, and I
Okay.
felt like it would be better if he didn't get killed, because he's still almost dead in a different way. Like he's living in purgatory now, where
Yeah.
he's kind of stuck, and he's always going to be followed and haunted by his past, and haunted by the fact that now he doesn't really have anyone to share this with.
Yeah, I think it's a very beautiful ending, and it has all these layers and this ambiguity, and well, um, congratulations for your
Thank
movie,
you.
and I think it's beautiful. I liked it very much when I saw it, and now when I saw it again, I think that.
Thanks.
Is it true that you shot it in 20 days? Was this a budget constraint, or is it your process?
It's definitely a budget constraint. It would have been nice to have a few more days, but I think it's okay. Like it still felt like a good amount. Like it could have been 15 or 18. So I think, there's movies that take 3 months. And so it would have been nice to have like 30 days, but 20 days was what we could afford under our budget. And I'm thankful for that. And it kind of keeps you on your toes. When you're making a first movie, you're like working a lot off instinct because I haven't done this before in this level. I've only made shorts. So it kind of keeps you on your toes in a good way.
Okay, and this kind of film with this budget, you send it to festivals, and then there's a patience game for it to have a life. How do you feel that the movie is doing 2 years after you've completed it?
I'm so thankful because I feel like, there's so many movies being made and a lot of them can disappear or not be appreciated. But I think that for the size of our movie, it was made with a lot of love and passion. And I think that's kind of coming through. And I think people can see that. And maybe it's not as polished or as made on a huge budget, but I think people can still see that everyone who made it loved it and believed in it. And I'm just so thankful because it's been shown in so many countries, and so many countries are now streaming it too. Like Portugal was one of the first festivals that we played at, and the reception from your country was just amazing, and everyone was reacting, and I made friends over there, even if it was just through the internet. It was just cool to connect with audiences from different parts of the world because it's good to see the reactions. And I even remember the review that you wrote, and it was just cool to see critics from other parts of the world reacting. So I'm thankful, and I kind of keep up with the status, and I see that at least like 5 people are watching it every day. And for me, that's enough, just the fact that people are still watching and discovering it, because I'm also a film lover and I love discovering small films from different countries and indie movies. And so I'm happy that people are finding it.
That's great. Are you working in something new? Is it something that you can share or talk about?
Yeah, I could share a little bit. I'm working on a film, and there's no guarantees, but I'm writing a script now, and it's a horror film, but it's going to be more like a body horror / possession movie, and it's set in Miami, and it's going to follow Colombian immigrants. So they will be the protagonists in this movie, and it will be talking more about the assimilation and the loss of someone's cultural identity when they come to a new country.
Okay.
And it's kind of, again, this one's inspired by my mother's side of the family and the way that some of the things that happened when they came to the US. And then, of course, I'm going to exaggerate it with the horror, but again, we're using horror as a vehicle to talk about this.
I for one can't wait to see it. I hope that you get to make it and that it's a huge success. Best of luck, Jonathan. Thank you for talking to me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah.
You really should try smiling.
Do you ever think about going somewhere else?
Tomorrow you go out again.
Would you like to play a game?
Wait!
I don't want to be sick.
Se gostaram desta conversa, podem ver o Meu Coração Não Bate Sem Ti na FilmTwist em filmtwist.pt. Não se esqueçam de subscrever o canal do Segundo Take no YouTube ou, se preferirem apenas o áudio, de assinarem o podcast no leitor da vossa preferência. Espero encontrar-vos por aqui no próximo episódio. Até lá, boas fitas!